also have options, either these, let's say, prohibitive regulation, as in France, but Germany not being a secular country. But you have, let's say, the strong neutrality of the state and weak anti-discrimination laws and weak gender equality laws. So totally different, you could say, is the Netherlands with a different tradition. There is no ban of the headscarves, neither for pupils nor for teachers in the school. There were some debates and there were some attempts to do that, but the Commission of Equal Treatment in the Netherlands declared all of these cases trying to prohibit headscarves in the public space as unconstitutional and as a discriminatory practice against women wearing a headscarf, and so the women were allowed, either as pupils or teachers, to go to school again. If we look at the Dutch case, the Dutch is also not a secular country, but the Dutch has a system which is called pillarization, and you have different pillars in a society, and these four traditional pillars are Catholic, Protestants, Socialists, and Liberal, and they're totally separated from each other, you could say, but all of these different pillars of the Dutch society have the right to express themselves in public, and they have the right to deploy all of these different pillars get public recognition, they get state funding, for instance, and Islam was integrated into this pillar structure, so it was no problem of wearing a headscarf in the public sphere. Moreover, the Netherlands have a strong anti-discrimination tradition and a strong tradition of gender equality, and this is institutionalized in the aforementioned Commission of Equal Treatment. And although the verdicts of this commission are not binding, they are respected in Dutch society, and it was always the claim of this commission that, as I said before, that a prohibitive approach would be discrimination of women against men, because Muslim men, they don't wear these obvious symbols, would be cases of inequality between different women, for instance. So this is the strong tradition of the Dutch society, and of course, due to this pillarization tradition, a multicultural approach which accepts cultural and religious difference and established institutions and law also to enforce these cultural differences. Now, if we look at Austria, Austria is an interesting case, and I'm not only talking about Austria because we are in Austria, but I think it's a really interesting case. You have, on the one hand, a growing xenophobia as a growing phenomenon, but you don't have these heated debate over headscarves like in Germany or in France, and there is no ban of headscarves, and religious symbols, crosses of course, but also headscarves are tolerated by private employer as well as by private employers. So you have teachers in Austria teaching with a headscarf. You have some cases where pupils were banned from schools, but these were more or less solved. You have, I think, somehow a growing debate about the headscarf. If some of you remember the campaign of the FPÖ in the Viennese election campaign, they had a poster with a veiled women saying, "Free women and not forced headscarves," or something like this. So you see there might be a debate. But how can we explain this Austrian tolerance towards headscarves in the public sphere? The relation between state and church, you can say Austria is not a secular state. So it's different from France, for instance, and it's more similar to Germany in this case. And therefore you could say, well, this is remarkable. why does Germany, with a similar tradition in church-state relation, have a ban at school, and why not Austria? So what are the arguments, or what are the conditions for that? You can say at the one hand, maybe, or you could assume maybe, the strong position of the Catholic Church is one reason. In an interview with the speaker for education in the Austrian parliament from the Austrian People's Party, the ÖVP, and he clearly said, well, if we would ban Muslim headscarves, then we would have to ban all the other religious symbols. So that's why the ÖVP is not for a ban. But if you just look at the German decision, the Bundesland Baden-Württemberg, which is also mainly Catholic, says, well, we tolerate nuns, but we do not tolerate Muslim headscarves. But anyway, I think this strong position of the Catholic state might be an explanation for the Austrian case. But another very important explanation for the Austrian case is the recognition of the Muslim religious community. And this is due to the Austrian history, to the empire at the beginning of the 20th century or at the late 19th century, when the Habsburg mainly Muslim state with Islam, and then the so-called Islam law from 1912 recognized Islam as a religious community, like a church. You could say not really a church, but that's a religious community like the Christian churches. And this law was forgotten, of course, for a long time, but then when the immigrants in the 1960s from Turkey came to Austria, it was revitalized, and in 1979 the Islamic religious community was established. Should I finish? Okay. And now, since the beginning of the 80s, Islamic classes are introduced, are taught in schools here in Austria, and these teachers are trained at an Islamic pedagogical academy, for instance. I think this is one of the main arguments for the, let's say, tolerance of Austria. Because if you look at policy of immigration and integration, you could also see the jus sanguinis, and you could also see a pressure for assimilation than multiculturalism. But on the other hand, you could also claim that maybe Austria has a sort of mixture of assimilation and, on the other hand, soft multiculturalist approach, while on the other hand, anti-discrimination and as well as gender equality are also weak arguments in the Austrian debates. So let me just briefly come to my last point. How could you solve these conflicts? And let me take the Austrian case as an example. Although there is no ban, although there is no heated debate, you can see that wearing a headscarf is difficult in Austrian society. We had a little research project which showed that the young girls and women have difficulties to get a job after school. So the only possibility they have is to marry. And this is not an opportunity for, let's say, a free choice, because they don't have a choice. If they don't have the opportunity to get a job, they don't have a choice. So also for Austria, which has more of a tolerance, we could say that there should be more policy measures and there should be more of political debate how to deal with difference. And one claim I want to make, that only to refer to the liberal principles is not enough. As you see, the countries in Europe all contextualize these principles and then they decide which principle is more important, which is less important. And I think this is very important for each country to contextualize these principles and to look at concrete situation. And this is, of course, the situation of women wearing a headscarf. And the other point I want to make is, and this is with reference to Sheila Ben-Habib, US-American philosopher with Turkish origins. She says the debates about the headscarf shows that there is a sort of resignification going on, a sort of renegotiation process of what is the political culture of these countries. And she says these resignification processes should be understood as learning processes. And they should be arranged as learning processes. And there should be arenas where to learn and to discuss, and where to discuss about these issues. And I think one very, very important claim to make in these discussion processes over difference is to give the women wearing a headscarf a voice. And I think in most of the countries who had a ban on headscarves didn't give a voice to women, but just made them either to victims of a patriarchal order or made them to a court case. But there are no public arena to discuss this. So I think this should be a first step to how to solve or to come to solutions over conflicts over values. Thanks a lot.
We're short of time, but we also started late, so and we have the format of at least a few discussion points. And are there urgent questions?
Did you find out in your interviews in Austrian Islamic community what's the main reason for young girls or young ladies, young women to wear the scarf? Is it more the religious, is it more the tradition, or is it a political statement they want to show?
Well, to make, yeah. As I said, there are several reasons to say which is the major reason or the main reason. We don't have the material to say that. But what we can say that most of the young women said it was our own decision, and it's not that somebody forced us. So, well, you could say, is this valid? Or isn't this only an excuse? But I think it's important just to say, well, if they design their identity like this, that they say, we did decide it ourselves, it was a sort of conflictual situation, and then we became religious, and to make it a religious sign was a major argument. They say, we want to express our religion, and I became religion due to several reasons. And some of them also told that they did it against their family. Yeah? It's not that they are oppressed by fathers, brothers, or who else. Some of them come from secular families, and they decided to become religious.
I have not a question, but a small remark. As far as I know, there was a decision of the German Constitutional Court about this question of the headscarf. And a teacher who was teaching not religious matters, but others.
History and German literature.
Yeah. And they decided she's allowed to wear the headscarf when the employer is convinced that she will observe the constitutional the Constitution of Germany. And I think this is a way to reflect this and to put in question whether the headscarf is only and always a religious symbol.
Yeah,
if it doesn't resolve all problems.
No. You're right, it's interesting. This court decision was rather ambivalent in the year 2003. Because the court, on the one hand, said, well, it could be decided on the context, what is unconstitutional or not. The court also said, well, wearing a headscarf might influence pupils, so this might be against state neutrality. But the main thing was the court said, banning the headscarf, and this was the verdict of the Constitutional Court, banning the headscarf is unconstitutional, But it didn't say it's unconstitutional because it's opposing to the liberal principle. It said it's unconstitutional because the German Länder, who are responsible for all cultural affairs in Germany, don't have laws who ban it. And then the process started where the German Länder enacted prohibitive laws. And now there is, first of all, for this moment, there is no way out because Bayern, Baden-Württemberg, Berlin, I think they already have passed this law which ban it. So, but this could be what you said, this could be still a way for Germany to make up the decision. And if you look at the, I don't know if this teacher, Teresa Ludin, if she will go to the European Court of Justice, it could also be then open up the discussion again.
I might ask the last word, why didn't the women, and I think it was a cold season, just take their scarves, even in here we have some, and just solidarity with the women. I don't understand why that debate didn't happen.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, well, what is, when you just make this, was interviews with the integration, speakers for integration of 4 Viennese parties, Social Democrats, ÖVP, Green Party, and the FPÖ. And all of them said, well, no, we are not against veiling and headscarves, and asked, why do women wear a headscarf? Some of them say, well, they do it for religious reason. Yeah, and they say, well, women wear it when it's cold.
Yes.
In Austria. And in the rural area, a lot of women wear the headscarves. This is thank you.